Morning.
Hi, everybody. I'm Gwen Ifill with PBS. And I'm excited to be here and to follow up on a lot of the questions because it's kind of what I do. But also, one of the teachers stole my thunder because she said she's always asked by her students, why, what if, and how come? And that's kind of how I start all my interviews. So I'm going to start there. Well, that pen was nice. And I want to apologize in advance. I have a mild case of bronchitis. So if I start coughing alarmingly, don't worry for me. I'm fine. I promise not to infect the co-chairs. I want to start by asking you both about something that Bill talked about, the controversies which we have been all engulfed in this 2016 election year. I wonder if you're surprised at all that education, that standardized testing has become such a campaign flashpoint. Melinda?
Well, I don't think it's just standardized testing. I think the flashpoint has become around the Common Core, which is kind of unusual, actually. Became sort of the litmus test that people started to use that language. But what's really interesting is when you look at the controversy state by state, we still have 42 states in the District of Columbia who are signed up to Common Core. When the governors and the state superintendents set out to create the Common Core in 2006, they said, this is what we think is right for our state. It wasn't that they were doing some national standard. It's what's right for our state so that kids are actually prepared to go out and be in the workforce in 2005. The few states that have rolled it back, if you look at what they've actually done, the standards they're using are 95% the Common Core standard. So it's what we know needs to be taught. So it became a political controversy. I think part of the issue is that in a few states, they went too quickly. Rolling out the tests, the assessments went a bit too fast, and parents are rightfully saying, oh my gosh, you're gonna layer on yet another standardized test. What needs to be done is the right test that says, do we know whether kids in 4th and 8th grade know math and reading per the Common Core, but you've got to replace some of the existing tests with the appropriate tests. So a little bit has to do with timing. The fantastic thing, though, is at the political level, there's a lot of noise. When you go out and literally survey teachers in many, many, many states, they are for the Common Core because they see those high academic standards, and what they're saying is it's giving us flexibility in our classroom. It's letting us do that creative, the dance between art and science of teaching. But now, because there's a standard, there are fantastic computer tools, paper-based tools that give us the flexibility to teach whatever lesson we want to teach, but know we're going towards the standard that's really going to help our kids succeed, not only in college, but in life.
So Bill, you conceded in your talk that maybe advocates were a little naive in rolling this out and didn't anticipate some of this pushback. What should you have done, could you have done, or is it just politics going to be politics and there was no other way around it?
Well, in a sense, the early days almost went too well for us. There was the adoption. Everything seemed to be on track. The two testing consortiums were getting their work done. We didn't realize that the issue would become confounded with the question of what is the appropriate role of the federal government versus the state government, confounded with do people take too many summative tests, confounded with if you raise the bar and all of a sudden you're saying, hey, our schools aren't doing well enough, is that accurate, and how come all of a sudden you're raising that bar, what should that bar be? And then the whole question of if you're changing, what is the right set of things to help the teachers be ready for that? How do you make that transition as smooth as possible? So all of those things came together. Sort of the internet myths about the math of the Common Core is some mysterious, strange thing that no parent could ever help a student with. Those kind of rumors got out there. And so it became, I'm always glad when education is a political issue. The most disappointing thing is when you elect governors or even a president where the issue of education, which, as Melinda said, we view as fundamental to the future of the country. If we do it well, it has one set of outcomes for the country. If we do it poorly, it has another set of outcomes in terms of our equity and global competitiveness. So it's good to see it being discussed. People should talk about standards and investing in teacher evaluation and the design of teacher evaluation. the fact that some of it's a little off the rails in terms of the facts, and that we're not getting at the heart of the issue, that's a bit disappointing. But it came fairly late. We've maintained most of the adoption, and you'd think if you were talking about Common Core standards, somebody would be saying, no, we're going to do addition differently in our state. Indiana, multiplication's really different than in other states, and our kids need to have it done this way, or all that stuff on the internet, all those tools that are out there that are based on the Common Core. We don't want our kids to use those.
They're not saying
those
that.
things. But instead, it's more about, well, we'll show them type thing.
So you said that this has been set up as a false choice, test versus no test. What is the true choice?
Well, the true choice is that a kid, if they do well in math in high school, then when they go to college, that entry-level test, they should pass it. And most inner city students do not. That is, they simply haven't been taught. Even kids who get very good grades in their math classes haven't been taught what they need to know. And so they go down this track, this remedial math track, that is a complete dead end for most of them.
And it's expensive, and they go into remediation in college, and say a community college, and that's the highest dropout rate of colleges right after that remediation, because it's so hard to do. And the other thing we heard from teachers in some of the community colleges in Miami, Florida, was the students' self-esteem is so low because they thought they knew math, and then all of a sudden you tell them, guess what, you don't know 2/3 of it, and you got to redo all of it in college and pay for it. And these are kids who, college is expensive for kids these days, very.
So you're paying sooner or later one way on this particular issue. How do you get past the misinformation that you see, or the loud debate that seems to obscure the point, just to get to the next step here? And you're right, you've done a tremendous amount in this many states, in this many jurisdictions, but then how do you stop it from sliding backward because of the misunderstanding?
Go ahead.
Well, I think the key is that states like Kentucky,
Exactly.
who was the first adopter actually, about a year before anyone else, have stayed the course. And they got their teachers have learned it. They've had good results. Now they're constantly learning and improving. The new curriculum that's designed around this, a lot of different choices are coming out now that are very, very good. Little learning pieces, including lots of online things. So I think the results will speak for themselves. And it's not like somebody's got some great alternative in terms of the benefits to students. It's more about, we'll show our autonomy than it is about having something better for learning.
The other thing that's happening is in Kentucky's data is so powerful. So when we have more states with that kind of powerful data, as Bill says, they've been at it the longest. He cited the graduation rates in his speech, but also when you look at the college readiness rates, 34% of Kentucky students were ready to go to college under their previous system. Now that they've implemented Common Core, of the ones who graduate, 62% are college ready. That is a phenomenal, in terms of readiness rate, phenomenal jump. And so they'll start to see that in those students then who are going on and actually getting great jobs. And they'll see it in their economy because a lot of those kids go back and work in their state.
You said one standard is getting great jobs, and the other standard is, or the overarching standard is college readiness. A lot of people think, college ready, what if I don't want to go to college? What if that is not my goal? Why are you setting these standards for me to do something I don't even want to achieve?
Well, I don't think anyone would say that having only 10% of African Americans ready to go to college is good. And many of the same skill sets that you're going to want, even if you don't go to college, the reading and writing capabilities, the basic abilities to do with math, you want those things. So coming up with the right phraseology of the aspiration we have for every kid, you're right, it's not 100% who go to college. It would be good if that was an option for all those kids. If you ask kids in 9th grade, virtually all the kids say they want to go to college. And so somehow between 9th grade and reality, there's a great deal of disappointment that's setting in.
What do you think that is?
Well, they see that the amount of learning they're getting, their ability to deal with those classes, they're just not being well prepared. And so they'd like when you talk to them in ninth grade, to go out there and have the kind of income and opportunity and variety and richness in their life that they see you get if you're a college graduate. But based on the role models they're seeing, the neighborhood they're in, they see that very few are getting there, and that they haven't been given the background to achieve it.
The other thing I would say is that, when we look out, we're a knowledge economy, and we're not in isolation. We're a knowledge economy in the world. So when you look out at 2025 and you say 2/3 of the jobs in the economy are going to require a college degree, if you're a student, and you're thinking about your dreams and your future for your family going forward, you want to dream high. And so we've got to have the right standards and teach the right things to kids at all levels of the education system so they can dream high. And if they decide for whatever reason college isn't right for them and there's another opportunity they want, great. But let's give them the chance to get one of those 2/3, those high-paying jobs.
I grew up in a household where college was there was no question. I would have been turned out of the house if I had said I didn't want to go to college. But I know a lot of people who didn't grow up like that. And to them, the idea of being told that was the natural path or the desired path was an incredible disincentive. And so I guess what I wonder as we figure out how to achieve and reach these aspirations, how do you not lose the young people who didn't have that kind of inspiration at home, who are told it's too expensive, you're not that smart anyway, just get a job at the factory, and that's all you need to aspire to?
I think sometimes, our work, we are really cognizant of the fact that our work is not done, again, in the school system in isolation of poverty and in isolation of lots of factors going on in the neighborhood and the home life that sometimes are very tough for kids. But you go in some of the best schools today, and some of the schools are charter schools. You go in and every person in the building knows the kid's name, is telling them they're college going, there are college banners across the wall, and when the kid starts to bring up the barriers they're facing at home, the school starts to work with them to have the support. So the person who is not only telling them they're college going is going to help them fill out the FAFSA form, is going to help them with their college essays, is going to say, okay, there isn't somebody to support you at night doing homework, stay at school 2 extra hours, and here's a place you can go where you can get support for your homework. That, you can do that, and we are seeing kids in charter schools that no matter the zip code they come from, they're getting up and into college, and they're starting to be able to really succeed. And that's what gives us optimism about really being able to change the system. And then when you see those charter schools, like is happening in DC, really those results, Kaya Henderson is making sure those go into the district schools too. So why is it not just 4th grade, but 8th graders, 6 years in a row on the math scores, gains are higher than the rest of the United States? It's because of those innovations that she's pushing in the schools, and those kids are coming from tough places. And guess what? They're ready to go to college.
You mentioned charter schools, and Bill, you also mentioned in your talk that charter schools are a great petri dish to test all these theories, but that 95% of kids are still in district schools. So how do you, absent Kaya Henderson in DC, how do you make that transfer of this kind of upward trajectory from just a charter school, the small examples we see there, to the broader ones where most of the needy kids are?
Well, the Washington, D.C. example, I think, is fantastic because it had, by many metrics, some of the worst results of any school system in the entire country. And the improvement has been pretty substantial. Not only have the charters come into DC and set a very high bar, but the non-charters have improved as well. And I don't think we should assume that we can't get enlightened superintendents like Kaya into every district in the nation. If we could, right now, the turnover of superintendents, it is a very tough job.
Yeah.
But there are superintendents who have high aspirations. What happened in DC was not only Kaya was good, but people really realized that what was going on just was a complete dead end. It wasn't without controversy because some schools were shut down. They had to increase the amount they invested in education in that case. They came up not only with the evaluation system, but with a pay system that was more generous. And so they brought everybody along. Michelle Rhee, who pioneered a lot of that, left the scene, and then Kaya came in and took it forward, and it's fantastic. So if you can do it in DC, I think you should be able to do it basically everywhere.
I live in DC. I'm saying it's hard. I'm also saying it's hard because it's expensive and political. And so I don't know how you apply it more broadly with those incredible barriers along the way.
Yeah, but again, you have to go out and look at what's going on in other states. So we've talked about Kentucky. Colorado is another fantastic example. You've got governor, you've got state legislature, and you've got support then at the superintendent level. So Bill cited some of the statistics about ACT scores in Denver, but if you go statewide, the commitment to education and to learning, we were also out in what's called Eagle County, which those are a lot of service jobs. So a lot of the sort of ski resort places where people are there supporting the ski industry. Those kids, getting great teachers out to those schools is tough to want to stay in those areas. But all the lessons that are being learned in Denver are also being learned down in the southern part of the state, down in the ski resort part of the state, and they're pouring those lessons across. And the most impressive thing, I think, to us, besides all the political support, and it's not without its controversy, is that also the local community has come together, and they're saying, this is what we want to do. So they have huge, broad community support, not just from philanthropists, but also from others working in those schools. So the whole state is pushing in the right direction. So we gave you just the Denver numbers, but that's another state where it looks very, very promising.
Let's talk a little bit about personalized learning, because that's something which sounds instantly great. We all, room full of experts, everybody knows one-on-one is better than 100 on one, right? But what does that mean? How do you define it, especially from this 30,000-foot place where we are?
Yeah, there's some great videos on this, and some of the leaders like Summit Schools who are gotten out in front on this. It really, the people who are doing it best, it looks very different. When the kid comes to the math class, they look up at a screen that says to them which group they're going into. And during their math period, they'll actually have 3 or 4 different activities that they're trying. So it's keeping the energy level, the engagement level up, and it's based on how the kid did on formative tests that they took over the last few days. And so they'll be put in with the teacher if that's needed. They'll be assigned a piece of software experience if that would be beneficial. And it does require the teacher to embrace a different way of doing things. It sometimes requires a little money to put the equipment in. But where it's being done, in not just charters, but also in public schools. I went and saw one in New York City that was quite fantastic. And in this, to date, most of it's for math, but the results are really quite dramatic.
Yeah, and some of it's also, as Bill said, the computers are helping immensely, just as a tool for this personalized learning, particularly because we have, as he said, we have the Common Core, so we have lots of software developers coming in and doing things. But also they're paper-based ones that work. One of the things our foundation's been involved in is something called the Literacy Design Collaborative and the Math Design Collaborative. Those are just paper-based tools. But if you go in a class where they're using these literacy design collaboratives, the whole way the classroom operates is completely different. I met a master teacher who was top of her craft. She was teaching other teachers how to teach in her school. She'd been teaching the Scarlet Letter for 10 years. She said, oh my gosh, when these paper tools came in and they really started to help me think about, am I asking my kids to analyze text, to have facts to back up their analysis, to do critical thinking? She said, I realized I wasn't teaching the Scarlet Letter the right way. I had to take apart my whole craft of teaching. And when you go in these classrooms, as Bill and I have done, you want to talk about uncomfortable. The kids are sitting in small groups, and they might have a recent current event article up on the board, and they are debating it together, and they're bringing the knowledge they have. The teacher's only injecting pieces of knowledge, and they're debating, and they're taking apart the text to say, well, does it really say that? No, I think this about the environment. No, I think climate change is in that direction. The kids are wrestling critically with problems without the teacher intervening in that uncomfortable time for a while. And then they're able to go and write based on what they really know. And then the teacher helps them edit with their writing and teaches them how to write. 800,000 teachers are using these tools now across the nation. It's changing the way they teach the classroom. And it's some of the gains that we just talked about, for instance, in Kentucky, it becomes because of those types of tools.
In the 15 years since you've been undertaking this, and in the 7 years in which you focused it in this particular way, what would you say have been the most pleasant surprise and the least pleasant surprise along the way?
I think the most pleasant surprise is when you actually visit a classroom where good learning's taking place. And you just see how much fun the kids are having and how engaged the teacher is. And whenever you get discouraged about this work, you go back and do that a few times and say, okay, that's what we're trying to create for kids. And you see that a lot in charter schools. You see it in some of the public schools as well. I think for me the most disappointing is that the work can go backwards. In the other areas we work, if we come up with a new malaria drug or malaria vaccine, nobody votes to uninvent our malaria vaccine. And so it's pretty steady progress. Every year is better than the last year. Whereas in this area, because of its complexity, its political nature, the relationship of management to labor, how are these things done, you can actually introduce systems like an evaluation system that you're only half serious about. And it doesn't get a strong reputation with the teachers. And so then people say, no, we'd rather have you give us no feedback at all. Just look up the number of years we've worked, and that tells us what we paid, and just completely leave us alone. That's a real possibility if you don't nurture these systems, get a little bit of extra money to get them going, get a little bit of outside energy to be brought in around them, and get it so it's at a critical mass. And today we can't say whether great evaluation and feedback systems to help teachers improve, that they're necessarily going to be widespread 10 years from now. There could be very few or there could be a lot. That really completely hangs in the balance. And so that's a level of uncertainty that we don't have in most areas we work in.
Yeah, I would say the hardest thing I've seen, or the biggest disappointment, has been after I went to that Boston school, my first set of school visits, I then went to California, and I went to some schools in Oakland and LA. And we rolled up to the school in LA, and I thought we were at a prison because of the way they had to unlock the fence and let us in. And then I went to Oakland, and there were 2 cop cars in the front yard of the school and a metal detector that we went through. And when the bell rang, everybody raced into their classroom. And I just never seen anything like it. I couldn't believe that's what our high schools had become, and that's how we were educating kids. And that was really hard to see. And I think when you lever that up, though, to my greatest disappointment overall in the school system, and Bill said it well, that you think things are moving forward, but they can get pulled back. It's the apathy from the parents, where the school's working for their kid. Maybe their kid is in the top 10% of the school. They get in the honors classes, or they happen to be in a good suburban school. My disappointment is that those parents sometimes try to keep the school in check because it's working for their kid, but they're not helping us think about the rest. And so it becomes this political fight or morass without saying, what do we want as a nation? What are we trying to do as a nation? What are we all trying to move forward? So that's been hard. And I would say the greatest thing that I've seen, and the most encouraging, because I want to end this question on that encouraging note, because the hard stuff is hard, is when you see a kid who they're thriving. And I've seen it in tough parts of Houston where there's no community field to play on, no parks, everything. And these kids are coming from rough neighborhoods, just to give you an example. And they're in a school, and they will tell you where they're going to college, where they're applying, what they want to study, and how they know they're going to get there. And they might be a freshman or sophomore in high school, but they say, I'm on my way, and here's how I'm doing it. And they got a plan for themselves. No matter what their zip code is, that's encouraging.
Yeah, to hear from somebody like Carlos Chavez.
I was just going to say that very thing.
Phenomenal. Really, and that's what we want. That's what you want everybody to have, right?
We solicited questions on Twitter to see if any of you or other people who are not with us in the room might have some additional questions, even though, of course, I like to control everything. But I will allow a few of these through. This one is from Karen, who asks, how can we best use education and technology to empower others to spread kindness and acceptance of all differences?
Well, I think the classroom is a place where kids learn to work with other kids, kids who are different. You know, it's part of the beauty of the school system, and that it mixes kids and all these things where kids help other kids learn, or kids get feedback on other people's work. These very participative things that keep the energy level up, those turn out to be not only good for these social things, but also for the entire learning environment. Now, I think the best teachers really know that's a big part of what they're doing. I remember one time we went to KIPP, the teacher said, I teach these kids to have values first and learning second.
Another tweet from Dan. Wouldn't a portfolio of led/supervised/mentored experiences be more valuable than tests? Lots of successful killers tested well. Twitter's a mean place, I'm just saying.
The data on testing is quite amazing. So put aside summative testing, just talk about formative testing. If you're tested on a subject, you retain the knowledge dramatically better. So they did a thing, it's one of the most dramatic results in education ever, where they had a set of students, some of whom were told they would be tested, and half of them were actually tested and half of them were not tested. And other kids who were told they wouldn't be tested, and then half of them were tested and half of them weren't tested. And the results were quite dramatic. The kids who were told they would be tested and were tested were the best by quite a bit. Then it was pretty equal between told you wouldn't be tested and tested, or told you would be tested and not tested. And then the lowest were the people who weren't tested at all. Being forced to consolidate your knowledge in a way that you can access it and perform it is one of the most important things in the whole education process. And life will have tests. That is, if you want to become a doctor, you will be tested about your knowledge. If you want to become a lawyer, you will be tested about your knowledge. And it's a good thing. It has to do with competence and what we expect. And so the idea that some people think testing is in and of itself a bad thing, I think what that says is they feel bad for the kids who haven't had good learning, because the testing then reveals it. And if that makes the kid feel bad about themselves, then we all feel like, hey, that's awful. That's a setback for that kid. That's not really fair for the kid. But you really have to go back to why weren't they able to do the addition or multiplication? Not, hey, let's let them through here without ever trying to ask them if they have those skills.
You want to weigh in on that one?
Well, I'll just use one anecdote. I don't actually want to go to a doctor who got an F on all their tests going through medical school. I mean, you want, if you think about careers out in life, you want to know that people are competent at what they're doing, whether it's the services, whether if they're setting up some new part of the electrical system in the United States, I want to know that they know what they're doing, right? And so I think, as Bill said, I think testing is a gating system that helps you know whether you actually know what you learned. And sometimes it's not just taking the test, it's going back over the things you missed and saying, well, why did I miss that? What were the steps? How do I learn it? That's what helps you embed the knowledge. So in fact, the student surveys that Bill talked about earlier as part of the evaluation system of teachers, it's when students say, hey, my teacher went back over the homework with me, that's when you know good teaching is happening in the classroom.
Our final question from Twitter is another hands-on, what do people actually do, from Evan, who writes, what is something teachers can do daily in their classrooms to get students college and career ready? Some specific thing that a teacher can do every day.
Well, I think this idea about the learning mindset, that it's not that some people are innately good at these things, it's do you keep pushing yourself to be better? And the sense of confidence. You've got to have kids feel like they are making progress. And And when they have setbacks, that, okay, let's go in and really analyze it. And that's partly why we drew such a strong contrast between summative assessments, where you never really get to see the specifics of what you did right or wrong, versus formative assessments that you're able to say, okay, this is great. I got a few wrong. That means I get a chance to get this concept in my head in a better way by understanding the cases that I didn't apply it properly. And so all the discussion now about learning mindset, that's not just a fad. That is something pretty profound about how students view themselves. And teachers being able to inculcate that, some are very, very good at it, and the rest, we should all learn from how the very best teachers do that.
Melinda, you get the last word.
Yeah, I would echo that. I think I would just say a safe environment, that the kid feels safe enough to be able to go out and explore their curiosity. And so that a teacher in the classroom having very high expectations for all the kids of what they can learn, but says, I care about you and I'm gonna help you on this journey with this growth learning mindset, and you can do this. You can learn this hard biology, you can learn this hard algebra, and we can make it fun. I think when you have that in the classroom, that mix of caring, high expectations, and we're working on our curiosity, I just think it changes everything for students.
Bill and Melinda Gates, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great, good question.